So what we're going to be doing is we're going to first discuss the cases of the past year, discuss requests from USChess, AB office committees, possible adding of a new TDCC member. Mike Nolan will have a presentation on the new tournament results upload. We'll have a short safe play discussion, then move to the TD workshop, which is what's going to count for TD credit if you need to use it as a substitute. So first, I am going to, if I can get to it, bring up the cases we've had over the past year. There we go. And coming back, I need to share screen. All right. And the cases in the past year were, all right. Sorry. It's this full screen. We ended up having a number of cases. One thing to note, TDCC has a couple of functions. When we deal with cases, we want to, where there's actual TD faults, we want to make sure that if we can teach a TD, we do so, rehabilitate them, or just give them a real minor little bit of guidance because they're pretty much there anyway. We need TDs to run tournaments, and if we cannot, we need to get the TD out of the way. Now, over the past year, by the way, I'm going to send this document to Renee so she can put it on the website. So I'm not going to quite talk exactly to what this says. We've had a lot of complaints that initially read like the TD's at fault. But then if you look deeper, that's not exactly true. The TD often took reasonable actions that the complainant didn't like. If a complaint has merit, the good faith fee will be refunded. That's obvious if we actually find against a TD. And a number of times, even when the complaint is denied, the complaint was reasonable enough that it was worth returning the good faith fee. About half the complaints overall over the years have come in at finding fault with the TD's actions, sometimes major, sometimes minor, almost trivial, but still fault. About 25% have come in at roughly being without merit, and the remaining 25% we found against the complainant, but still considered it to be a complaint with merit. We had 11 this year. 2 not found to have any merit. One more was not under US chess, purview. And another 2 were denied, but still found to have merit. And then we had to take action in 6. So that's close to the 50 and 25%. What we had is a complaint about a spectator refusing to clean up their food mess and the TDs having to take action before the venue decided they would never have chess tournaments there again. That complaint was deemed to have no merit because they were complaining that the posting, the announcements, the numerous reminders to clean up were not enough to let them know that they needed to clean up. And they got very upset when the TDs were forced to clean up their food mess themselves. Another one, when sometimes you get into a tough situation And a TD is forced to make a decision as to whether or not a game would be decisive for one person or decisive for another. There is a rule 14J draw declared by the TD that can be used in such cases like that where they're not sure exactly what happened, and making a ruling either for either player can be a drastic decision. And in this one, a TD suggested a draw instead of just stepping up and making that determination. And if it's something where you can make that determination, you should make it. And if you can't make that determination, you shouldn't really suggest it. If the two players agree, that's fine. But you shouldn't try to suggest something that you don't think really should be done. That was not a huge penalty to the TD, but it was a reasonable complaint. The Rules Committee had already ruled the draw stays. TDCC doesn't rule on results of games. That's the Rules Committee. So he handled the rest. Then we had a reversal of cell phone violation for a loss of game. Another committee already ruled that there was enough merit to get the fee returned, and TD penalties were assigned. Had a self-reporting of a player that cheated as a player years ago that also happened to be a TD. Very long or permanent suspensions were discussed, but with leniency for self-reporting, it was simply a suspension for a single-digit number of years. Then we had a complaint concerning apparent TD strong partiality in favor of a player. Another committee had already ruled against the TD, and TDCC felt that strong partiality had been very definitely determined, and that TD ended up receiving a double-digit suspension of TD certification, double-digit number of years. Partiality is something that the committee was not accept for fairly obvious reasons. Another complaint, relatively new TDs didn't truly understand their software, hearing software, and how the tie breaks were done. They made mistakes. And another TD ruled on, another committee ruled on whether or not there should be any changes to the results to the trophy awards. And the TDs were giving information to protect them, to educate them, since they'd already expressed a willingness to learn. That was a case where we're trying to rehabilitate TDs that are trying, and being human, they are making the occasional mistake. We accept that mistakes can be made, but we want to make sure that people learn from them. Then there was a complaint about a TD continually falsely rating games that he did not actually play, which turned out to be accurate. That is significantly against what TD should be allowed to do, and no consideration was given to anything less than a permanent ban on TD certification for that person. Another had a TD, not yet senior, who was on staff, not as a TD, at a FIDE rated tournament, support staff, not actually making any rulings. And then that TD made a controversial game-ending decision, which paints us poorly in the eyes of FIDE, as well as being a serious problem in the tournament. That TD received a suspension for a single-digit number of years with a limitation on how far up he could go for a double-digit number of years. And note, you have to be at least senior to even become licensed in FIDE, so that limitation to no higher than local will keep him out of making any decisions at FIDE tournaments for a double-digit number of years. That way, even if FIDE Events doesn't do anything, we've ensured that that TD will be on the sidelines for that amount of time for FIDE Events, and also for a shorter period of time from US chess rated events. Then there was a complaint about a tournament that was only rated in a regional rating system. The complaint may or may not have been valid. We didn't investigate it. We didn't look too much at it since it was not a US chess rated event. We would have no authority over it, just like FIDE doesn't have any authority over most local club events or even the US Open, since the US Open is not FIDE rated. State invitationals would be different, but not the US Open. We had one complaint about changing the final round pairings from the original. In that one, it looked like the pairing software was set to avoid teammate pairings in the final round, which for perfect score should not have been done. When that was noticed before the round started, the TDs corrected the pairings, which everyone in the committee said, yes, those revised pairings were the best pairings and should have been corrected before the round started. Sometimes even shortly after the round started, they can be done. So in that particular case, the complainant's complaint in and of itself, with no response from the TD, was found to have enough information to deem it to be without merit. And like others without merit, the good faith fee was not returned. And last one listed here is about a suspended TD still acting as a TD. That's not good, to put it mildly. So in addition to finishing out the original suspension, we added another double-digit number of years to the duration of the suspension, suspended the chief TD that had left the site mid-tournament for an extended period of time for a fractional year, and let the EB know that the affiliate should put up posting about the person that was not eligible to make any rulings or decisions, just to avoid having this occur again. There was consideration to making the currently suspended TD undergo a lifetime ban, but that eventually trailed off to merely a double-digit number of years ban. When a TD is suspended, it is not good if the TD acts again. Or in the case of FIDE, it's not good for a TD that makes decisions in areas that they're not qualified to do. There's also one ongoing case and a couple more waiting for other committees to do their part before we take them up. And just as a bit of advice, if you're ever in a situation where there's a complaint, either as a witness, a person doing the complaint, or a respondent, please understand that we want to determine what's going on in the complaint, so provide the information. We don't have a true investigative wing. We can sometimes do a little bit looking at MSA and so on, but we don't have anything that gives us any investigative capabilities. and that we will try to first see if the TD made an error. Then if an error was made, if for rehabilitation, or sometimes it was just purely a one-off human error that simply requires a warning or probation, do those. And if the TD is not going to correct himself and is going to be an ongoing problem, then we get back into TDs that are unwilling or unable to learn, get deterred. We don't particularly like being we don't particularly like being a committee that has to hand down hard penalties, but when necessary, it has to be done. We also had a few requests from US Chess. The EB requested some tips that can be used to help guide new organizers, and we provided a number of them as a committee. Some to address rules and give guidelines for this change to the ratings programs that are going to be coming up. They're going to keep the ratings system, the ratings calculations, hopefully the same as they move to a new platform and new language. But we needed to address various rules and guidelines for it. One of the biggest things being regarding the supplements and the live ratings, because having a supplement rating is one thing that they had not anticipated, and it's kind of necessary. There's an office request on how to procedurally handle safe play issues at US Chess organized events, and they contacted a number of committees with TDCC giving their input to that. The Women's Committee had a request on contacting female TDs to help promote their issues, and as chief of Supranationals last year, I had a lot of email addresses of TDs that worked the event because I had to send broadcast emails to everybody. So I could BCC a number of female TDs along with the CC'd Women's Committee chair so that they could decide whether or not they wanted to get in touch with the Women's Committee themselves. They got the information, but their privacy was maintained so they could make the decision. And finally, there's an office request on how to deal with TDs that are minors and are faced with safe play issues. People are a little bit perturbed at the idea of a 14-year-old chief TD potentially having to handle a safe play issue. There was even the suggestion by the office of having a junior TD, I'd call it a kiddie TD certification level, which nobody on the committee liked. There was discussion on even having a minimum age of 18 years to be a TD, which people on the committee had a much lower opinion than merely not liking it. We only begrudgingly accepted the 13-year-old minimum age because that's the lowest you can go for any safe play training. Some things were suggested. First, if we have a kiddie TD level, remember that in the TD affiliate area, there is a search by TD certification level. So that would be a very easy way for anyone able to get to that area to simply search for every TD in the country that happens to be a minor. There are very few people that would abuse that, but even one is too many for us to feel comfortable with. So we definitely did not want to have any type of level. There was discussion on whether or not to limit minors to not being a chief TD. And a lot of people on the TDCC started out as minors. Moving up the certification levels and being barred from Chief TD would have been an issue for them, and they might not have stayed. The one thing that we're looking at now is potentially having the minors still able to be TD, still able to be Chief TD, but requiring an adult on site affiliated with the tournament who has had safe play training to handle any such issues, to alleviate concerns over a minor having to deal with them. I have not yet heard how that's going to work out. And as far as a potential member to be added to TDCC goes, we do have a desire to have at least one senior TD on the committee, preferably someone not moving up to ANTD or NTD in the near future, or not too distant future. Excuse me. The one we had has moved up to ANTD, so we're looking to have another one come in. So if any senior TDs that are not planning to upgrade within the next few years have some interest, please email me at jkwewell@yahoo.com. Which is right there on the screen. And now, that takes care of the initial part of the presentation. I did mention a major programming website change that is upcoming. So, Mike Nolan.
And you can see it extends across the screen quite nicely. I do want to mention that we will have a more complete presentation on the LEGO system at the US Open. That workshop will be on Thursday at 10 o'clock. I don't know if it's actually going to be done as a Zoom session as well, but I do know that we will be sharing slides and videos from that afterwards. And I would certainly invite you to come to that one or look up the information to see where we are. That being 3 weeks from now, I would expect to see a lot of things being a whole lot more polished than they are today. And I'm willing to answer whatever questions I can answer.
Anyone with a question in the chat?
Hey, Jeff, this is Mike Hoffmeyer, and for Mike Nolan also. So when this system goes live, will the old way that directors submit tournaments be turned off, or we can still submit them the old way for a period of time?
We have to have a clean cutoff. So the current plan is probably when we run a supplement, which we run on the third Wednesday of the month, the cutoff for that supplement would also be the cutoff for the current TD affiliate system. So when we start the supplement run, we would basically turn off the access to the TD affiliate area. Now that does mean that if there's a TD who has an event that isn't quite finished yet, they're probably going to have to start all over again. I don't think there's any reasonable way around that. The good news is we're not in the busy time of the year, so there probably won't be a lot of major events up there. And if there are ones that are being uploaded, and according to my statistics, 85% of the events we've run in the last year were ones that were uploaded, and the rest were mostly entered online, and most of those were fairly small. Although I did actually find one event entered online that had 200 players in it. But I think the plan is that we would basically, no additional events or data would be generated on the old system. However, the old system, the MSA pages and stuff like that would remain up, if only so that people compare the old data and the new data and make sure that it looks the same. But obviously, any new tournaments that we rate on LEGO would not show up on the old MSA system.
And assuming when you get closer, you'll start taking at least some of the events that are being entered into the old system and simply reloading the DBFs into the new one for processing.
If the event is rated on the old system, when we do a database transfer, all rated events would transfer over. What would not currently transfer over is events that are in process, because the structure that LEGO was using is so completely different from the structure that we're doing right now. It would be very challenging to say, let's take this event that's in process and push it into the LEGO system as an in-process event. I don't think that's practical, and that's certainly not within the scope of the contract that we have with LEGO.
I was talking about pre-cutover testing, not doing anything carrying over some of the cutover.
As far as cutover,
pre-cutover testing.
I had suggested, actually, as you may know, Wednesday was the cutoff for the August rating list, and I had actually suggested the possibility of doing a database refresh, and it was decided that there were other more important tasks. So we can actually do a database refresh anytime we want. It's just from the standpoint of when we go live, the cleanest cutoff we get is the cutoff we get right before we do a rating supplement. So that would be our ideal point in time, is to say, when we get to that third Wednesday of the month, that would be when we would want to try to schedule the cutoff. If we can't make that, we'll just have to deal with it, but that would certainly be the cleanest option. I think I'm basically done, unless there are any kind of general questions that, I don't want to get into the weeds, because the weeds currently need a weed whacker.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything further to be done here. Now, normally at one of these meetings, we end up going into all of the advanced delegate motions in the upcoming delegates meeting that need to be discussed by TDCC, at least for a recommendation. But none of them were really TDCC related this time. So, yeah, I didn't want that. So because of that, we had time available for Mike Nolan to do his work. I am trying to get, let's close that. Sorry. I am trying to get to a Word document, but, there we go. Now I've got my scroll bar. So since we didn't have anything on the ADMs, that gave us time to give Mike Nolan his presentation. Before we move into the workshop, one thing I wanted to go into was some of the concerns with safe play, which is obviously a big thing right now. And from a TD standpoint, some things you have to be worried about or take into consideration are training TDs. Nobody's going to live forever, at least as far as I know. So you always want to make sure that you're training the next generation. And when you're considering safe play, and even years ago before this became high on people's radar, if you're going to be training a TD in the back room, particularly someone under 18, take care to avoid the appearance of impropriety. When I've trained underage TDs, I've always said that I'm perfectly happy to do so as long as there is a parent in the room too. And that's not because the parents are worried about me or because I'm worried about anything that might be said by the kid, but rather to avoid someone walking by and thinking, oh, there's something wrong going in here, I have to start a rumor. Not something you want to have people do. So having a parent there cuts that off at the pass. And avoiding one-on-one situations does deter the people that are not particularly trustworthy from doing anything they shouldn't do. And so in that hopefully small percentage of cases where there is an unknown reason that people should be concerned, having a third party there prevents anything from happening then. And that's just a side event of what I consider the main thing of making sure that nobody else starts an unsubstantiated rumor just based on their own imagination about what might be happening. So whenever you're doing training of a TD, which I'm hoping every TD of at least senior level and preferably at least local level is doing, keep the safe play and the avoiding the appearance of impropriety in mind when doing so. Now, at scholastic tournaments, when I've imposed a penalty on a player, it's not uncommon for the opponent of the player being penalized to say they don't care, I don't have to impose that penalty. And the natural reaction of a lot of people is, well, if neither player wants a penalty, I can just avoid doing anything in that game. I don't do that. If I'm imposing a penalty and the other player wants to be nice and not having it imposed, I'll still impose it. And that's not because I'm trying to be hard or anything. That's because peer pressure exists, and I want to avoid the potential for serious peer pressure to be applied on someone to avoid having their friends penalized, even if the player thinks a penalty should be applied. And if I don't bow to peer pressure, it doesn't help them to even attempt it. And it also means there's no reason to try to escalate to bullying if peer pressure doesn't seem to work. So I'm doing that more from a safe play consideration of simply eliminating the chance of pressuring someone into alleviating a penalty. And also, one thing that helps alleviate some safe play issues from occurring is to avoid coming to the board determined to find which player is at fault. During my announcements, I always emphasize TDs are there to resolve confusion. And when I come to the board, it's to try to resolve any confusion, and that helps keep people, particularly at scholastic tournaments, at a calmer emotional state. And if they start out calm, the escalation is less likely to occur. So those are just a few of the things that I've done to try to minimize confrontations, safe play concerns, and keep it relatively calm. Now, last year, we finished the TDCC meeting, I want to say in about 40 minutes, and started the TD workshop.
Hey, Jeff,
20 minutes
this
early.
might, before you go to the workshop, I do have one thing that I want to bring up so that the TDCC is aware that the executive board is considering going forward.
Okay, if this is the meeting we're going to have after the workshop,
No,
that's one reason. Okay, that's something different. Go right ahead.
no, this is about the executive board is every year or every time the executive board meets at the US Open, one of the things we look at is the activities and responsibilities of committees that are appointed by the executive board. And the executive board is very likely to alter the responsibilities of the TDCC to also give it oversight of the program for our national arbiters, as well as issuing rulings on the conduct of FIDE arbiters at US chess events. Now that of course would mean that it could only be an event where the U.S. was in charge of the event. If for example FIDE is running running a world championship in like the World Rapid and Blitz, U.S. Chess would not have any oversight of the conduct of those arbiters in that event, nor would we have oversight of arbiters who are misbehave in Puerto Rico or in Guam or in another FIDE country. So it'd only be in the U.S. 50 states as far as what the arbiters go. But our national arbiter program, as well as issuing recommendations to the executive board on the conduct of arbiters against whom a complaint has been raised, would also likely fall under the purview of the TDCC. And it's possible that the name of the committee could change to be Tournament Directors and Arbiters Committee.
And I think I told you before that doing that, we already have.
You're muted, Jeff.
My apologies. Thank you, Bill. As I told you before, there's a significant overlap between FIDE and US, between FIDE events and TDCC. So we have a number of those people there already, and FIDE events has a senior TD that would fulfill our desire to have a senior TD on TDCC. So from that standpoint, it would be okay. And if you're fine with TDCC handling some of the FIDE events issues, like we did indirectly with one of the rulings we made this past year, then the committee as a whole was generally fine with that. So moving on to the workshop, which we're now 5 minutes early. That's a little bit later than last year. But this is something that local and senior TDs can use for one of the substitutable credits. And hopefully people can see my screen. I think it's sharing, says 80-20 top 25 TD tips. This is something that Tim just came up with some time back. And I'm going to include a copy of this with the comments I'm generally going to go through. But these 25 tips are always good for TDs to remember. First one, of course, is think like a player, because if you're a player and you know how you would like things run, then you're more likely to want to do that yourself when you're directing. Some of these are long, some of these are fairly quick. Post-it, that's simply saying that if it's not posted, that people will complain that they didn't know. And in the internet age, you have posting it on the tournament website is one place where people will look, even if they don't look anywhere else, and give you a chance to get to them. Posting it in the tournament hall will give them something that you can point to. If they aren't checking the internet, they can still see it. And in the based on tournament, posting it in the tournament hall is one of the first things you should do once you figure out what the prize fund will really be. And third, of course, announce it. Because strangely enough, not everybody reads the internet. Not everybody bothers looking at the walls. So announce critical information before the start of the rounds, like the next round time, the time control, cell phones, fair play announcements, washroom locations, and so on and so forth. And then when someone comes in 15 minutes late to the round, didn't bother to read anything, didn't bother to listen to the announcements, and says, "You never told me," you can tell them, "Hey, we told you all of these different ways. We can't force you to come in on time to hear all of that, but we can provide it so that it's available for anyone who's interested." Be in the tournament at time control. This is changing a little bit with increment time controls because it used to be time control before delay even was very specific. And then when delay came in, it didn't push it too much. Sometimes a fair amount, like at one national high school, where the round went about 25 minutes late because of a very long running 10-second delay. But usually it's not that bad. What with increment time controls, it can really extend when the time control situation occurs. 30-second increment with a 40 move game, and you can have a 40-minute range, generally effectively 15 to 20-minute range of when people are in time control pressure. But if you're in the tournament at that time, you can get to the games quickly if TD isn't needed for a flag claim. Excuse me. I mentioned this before. Train somebody to be a TD. Because nobody lives forever, I do not expect to be the first one to do so, and neither should you. And you can't be in two different tournaments on the same day. It's easier to play if you're not the TD. I've noticed when I do that, it's effectively a 200 rating point hit in my performance. And if you plan on directing larger events, you're going to need trained staff to assist you anyway. Now, number 6, use common sense. That's rule 1A. It's there for a reason. A lot of the safe play requirements are applied common sense, but if you use common sense, you can avoid trying to overthink things to the point where you decide something that's not really the greatest thing. Just stop it, take a step back, look and say, does this make sense? And that'll handle a number of issues. Make sure you read the rule book, of course, because some things are not obvious, but for the obvious, 1A is there. Use the US Chess.org MSA site or the player search utility. Those will be changing in the future with LEGO, but it can still be used to find the current membership expirations, double check the right idea for players. Many players, particularly kids, have the mailed in or spreadsheet membership information entered with their sibling's ID. And sometimes that happens even with online, with someone entering once and then a family membership accidentally changing the name for that ID number, which I've seen happen occasionally, and entering the other kid with the same ID. So double check for duplicates, double check for never paid for ID numbers with the Civi CRM. IDs get created before a payment occurs. So parents will see, oh, their kid has an ID. Well, they're good. And they'll enter a tournament with that ID. And it's not going to work when you try to rate it. There are also TD pages that have useful information. Such as this one goes into TD videos, town hall, has consent forms and so on. Let's see, somewhere in here, there's something about demystifying tournament director certification. Christina Schweiss is not on TDCC. She wrote that, sent it to us. We looked at it and said, oh, it's worth posting. So if you have ideas, you can send it. And if they're good, we'll use them even if you're not a member of the committee. Some of the various videos listed are here below. There are a lot of them. So the website is available as a tool. So use it. Don't ignore it. Um, I found that checking those IDs before tournaments and then using the search site by name can find the real ID that a person needs to have. And sometimes one other issue with the Civi CRM is it defaulted to new ID when a person was trying to renew and ended up creating a second ID for a player. So in those cases, I will use the original ID with the valid rating, email the office saying I'm submitting the tournament with this, and if you can get the membership switched over before I have to rate it, then everything will move. Membership expiration dates switched over before I have to rate it, then everything will move through cleanly. Otherwise, 2 days after the tournament ends, I'll simply switch to the ID that has a membership on it, rate it, and then the office will have to go through and do a merge that requires more work on their part. So I give them an incentive to make things easier for themselves later on and allow the tournament to get rated more quickly. I don't know if they like the way I'm giving them that incentive, but I found that it generally seems to work. And I've also found that as long as you're polite and helpful when you're sending those emails about the changes, it makes the office more willing to work with you as well. Being rude is not a way to win friends and influence people. Make sure you keep everything, at least for a while. I usually toss result sheets about 6 months after the tournament, but I have had questions arise 1 or 2 months after the event. And since I still had the result sheets, I was able to show that the report to US Chess matched what the actual report of the game was. And at that point, changing it requires getting both players to agree what was going on. And of course, sometimes it turns out that the result sheet was misread and the game correction needs to be done, which the chief TD is able to have US Chess do without having to contact anybody else. During the online tournaments, it was useful to keep the online Zoom chat logs of the monitoring TD to verify that communication was done in a timely manner. US Chess does have forums, and the forums have a number of topics, one of which, of course, being about the LEGO testing and various others. And those can be useful to tournament directors. There is a noise to content ratio that I'd prefer would be better, but there's still a fair amount of good content and tips available. Also, that's where you can, if you've been doing tournaments for a while, give other people that are looking for help suggestions on how they can find the help they need to do something. Moving on to number 10, there are buy and withdraw sign-up sheets. Even today, people will make a decision about buys after the tournament has started instead of doing it during pre-registration. And of course, withdrawals are always decided upon after the fact. So when you have buy or withdrawal sheets, check them before you do pairings to make sure you've gotten all of the buy request or withdrawals and you don't pair someone who's not going to be there. If you've got multiple sheets, check them all. Post a cross table showing all rounds so that people can see upcoming buys. If they see all rounds and they see they don't have a buy, they'll come to you and say, wait a second, what happened to this? Or if you post all rounds and you see that they do have a buy that they didn't request or they requested in a different round, you can get it resolved before you have someone sitting there waiting an hour for an opponent to show up that never shows up. And remember that nowadays, that also means you check your emails and texts to see whether or not buys or withdrawals were sent to your email account or to your phone. And that is something that younger TDs may be more apt to do, while others that are not quite as young might not think of offhand. So please remember to check that. Check everything, even the playing room arrangements, at least twice. I can tell from personal experience that it can be quite hectic to start a scholastic tournament by moving tables and chairs into the previously locked tournament room 5 minutes before the start of the round because the venue staff had not done any of that. Fortunately, in situations like that, you can often draft a number of parents, but it's not something you want to have to do at that point. Bathroom availability needs to be ensured. At Super Nationals, one of the playing rooms had 3 girls and 1 boys bathroom. So we noticed that on Wednesday and repurposed one of those girls' bathrooms, so it was a 2 and 2. But that wasn't something that was apparent on the initial site layout. And if you don't look for that, you're not going to see it. At least at Super Nationals, we arrive on a previous day. For most tournaments, you're not going to arrive until the day of. So you need to look at that then. Keep looking during the event. Also, when boards are completed, there are some TDs that thinks that it makes things look neat and tidy if the chairs are pushed in. So because of that, their own willingness to make things look neat means they want them all pushed in. Personally, I want them pushed in because later in the round, when I have to go more quickly through from one game to another more distant game, since most of the games are over, having all those chairs pushed in makes the aisles a lot easier to travel through. Now, whether you want it neat and tidy, or if you want it so that you can actually move through it later in the round, the results are the same. And there are other things that you want to do. For instance, making sure that the tables are cleared off. Players, for some reason, have a tendency to leave empty cups or sometimes half-filled cups of water at the board instead of throwing them out. And that can cause problems if they aren't dealt with before another group of players starts coming in for the next round. So keep an eye on the room. You may not like being a person cleaning up a room, but somebody has to do it. If you can get other staff or players willing to do so, more power to you. Be prepared to be the last resort. A short time after the round has started, check to see who's not yet arrived at the board. There may be a missed buy request, a missed withdrawal. They may be at an unused board. At One World Open, I saw that board 669 didn't have a player sitting at it. Or I had one player missing. And then I noticed that board 699, which looks a lot like 669 when viewed upside down, had someone sitting at it even though I knew that board was not being used. Needless to say, once it got moved to the correct board, it worked out fine. It was slightly late, but not too bad because that was being looked for early in the round. Now, if you're in an ASAP schedule, there's a possibility that announcements may not have gone everywhere, and a number of the players have not been informed that a new round has started. So, not seeing who's arrived at the board, particularly if they're all from the same team in a scholastic event, can help resolve that. And of course, when you're looking at the boards that didn't have players, you know which ones to check later to make sure that the forfeit wins really were marked as forfeit wins, if any occurred. Keep track of that because otherwise you're stuck with having to resolve that after the tournament, contacting the office and saying, oops, that win was really a forfeit win and it should not have been rated. Now you want to consistently deal with the odd man player. The odd man in a score group, whether you're dropping to the next score group or bringing up someone from the group below. Nowadays, this is more straightforward because we no longer have the Harkness with bringing someone up. Pretty much everyone drops to the next group, but you still want to also decide what you're doing if the odd man is an unrated player. Because sometimes you don't want to drop an unrated since you don't know if that's the weakest player in the group. You just know that you have no idea what the strength really is. So whatever you decide, make sure it's consistent. You don't change backward and back and forth from round to round. Also remember, if a tournament's only 4 rounds, then players who have no rated games yet need all 4 to get a publishable rating. So if someone gets a forfeit win, you may want to see if you can get an extra game so they can get that 4th game to get a publishable rating. Start the rounds on time. You can be forgiven for a lot, particularly at a scholastic tournament, if you get all of the rounds started on time or close to on time. If parents can trust that things will move quickly enough to get them out on time, they'll be a lot more cordial than otherwise. Now, also getting back to scholastic tournaments, I found that one way to start rounds on time is to allow games with both players present to start early if they both agree. Because if you don't do that, then some parents will wait and bring their kids in at the last moment so they're not sitting around waiting, bored, and acting up. If the parents realize, oh, if I bring them in now, they may start, then they'll do so. And that'll allow all of the other games, well, all of the other parents to be willing to bring their kids early and allow all of the games to actually start on time. Little trick that you can get away with in scholastics because most kids are willing to start on time, even if there's still the possibility of some noise because most of the kids are willing to start early, even if there is the possibility of some noise because the actual round time hasn't been started yet. When you're doing so, please make sure that you have a cutoff on any players that decide to do Skittles before the round. That's something that you really have to monitor because there can be confusion once the actual start of the round occurs. So I tried to avoid having any players try to do pre-round Skittles just to avoid any potential confusion there. Treat your TD job as a profession. Take it seriously. Treat it just as well as you would a job. I mean, it's not going to be for almost any TD. you're not going to be able to make an actual job out of it simply because the money as a TD isn't there for almost anybody. I know it's not there for me, never was. But I mean, it turns out nice as a hobby that brings in a little bit as an actual job. It's not going to be anything that you can depend on. So if you treat it as a job, people will realize you are taking it seriously. There have been people who thought it was my job simply because it was of the way I was handling it. Well, if you treat it as a casual hobby, then your performance will be subpar and people will notice. You want to be serious when you're being a TD, and you want people to realize you are serious. Now, one thing that's happened in recent years, particularly with prizes with limits, if someone's, say, was rated more than the cutoff within the past 6 months, but is currently under the cutoff for a section, they might have a limit on the amount of money they can win. You want to make sure that you are giving no more prizes than you have winners and using no more winners than you're using up prizes. If someone qualifies for, say, the Class A prize and third place, they can only win one prize. They can't take both of them. And if someone has a limited prize for first place and the remainder of first place is more than second, you can't say that the limited person gets what they're limited to and then the next person gets the remainder, because that's using one prize for two people, when the second should be brought in as well. So you want to make sure that the number of prizes and the number of players match up right until you run out of any more prizes or any more players, one or the other. And at which point you divide up the monetary prizes. And of course, this does not apply to any extra prizes. Some examples, of course, are the current prevalence of mixed double extra prizes, where you participate as an individual for the individual prize. And also, if you're on a team, you can get a team prize. And in scholastic tournaments, of course, there are team trophies and individual trophies. And someone can win an individual trophy and still share in a team trophy. This is something you have to be cognizant of when you're setting up your pairing programs and when you're dealing with people, because some people simply don't understand that, oh, I cannot win 3 prizes, the third place, the under 1900 and under 1700. They don't realize that they think they can get all 3 instead of the largest one of those that they qualify for. And if you don't understand this rule itself, yourself, then you may find yourself handicapped when trying to deal with people who want to take multiple prizes home just for themselves. Nowadays is actually the last 20 years now, when this list first came out, submitting tournaments online was not as common, but you want to submit your tournaments online. It's cheaper. Once you get used to it, you'll find it's easier. I may have a little bit of a learning curve when we move to Lego, but it's still going to be a lot easier than trying to do it otherwise. You can discover your errors during the submission process. You can correct them immediately instead of having them show up in MSA for everybody to see that you made a mistake and then having to get the office involved to get everything fixed. If you can find them, fix them with no one ever noticing that there was temporarily an error, then you look better. And for my own personal self-interest, I'd rather that any mistakes I made get caught before anybody else ever has a chance to see them. Also, players have come to expect same-day rating updates, same-hour rating updates. A rating update once their game is finished, even though the rest of the tournament is still going. That last one you can't do too much about. Even though players will say, "Hey, I finished my game. Why can't I see my rating?" Well, you got 23 other games in your section still going. I can't write it yet. Yeah, but my game's finished. Why can't I see my rating? Get used to that. Don't let it bother you, and simply explain, "Sorry, can't do that." Now, some multi-day events, well, actually, if you're doing a multi-day event, try to submit a test rating report at the end of at least one of the days, if not each day, to make sure there are no membership issues or TD certification issues. Nowadays, TD certification issues can include safe sport certification. Just make sure to delete your test afterwards so you don't accidentally rate your test. That would not be a good thing to do. But submit them online, do the validation, get it done as soon as you can. Sometimes there's going to be delays as you have to resolve various membership issues. But at least if you know what they are, you can resolve them quickly.
My apologies.
Now
Will you define test rating, please?
I'm sorry. My apologies. When I say a test rating report, that's actually submitting the rating report to verify it, find out all of the errors, but not actually going to the processing and payment stage. Let the submission process show you everything. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I'd gotten off this. Let the submission process show you everything that's a problem before you rate the report. And then go through and fix those. And that test run, call it a test run, a dry run. Dry run might be a better word.
And then that's something we highly recommend you do, like after you've completed 2 rounds of a 4 or 5 round tournament, so that you still have time to correct membership issues, ID number problems, and so forth. If you wait till the tournament's over and everybody's gone, the test run's not going to prove anywhere near as valuable for you.
Yeah. That's an example of someone who's so used to an idea that they just automatically assume everybody knows it's I apologize for not explaining what the dry run was. Anyway, actually, we're doing pretty good on time. Next up is I may need to modify the wording on this one from what Tim originally had. Ask any players with challenges what they need. You can make assumptions, but that can result in either overlooking something or in making an unwanted accommodation. I've said in the past that in the early 70s, a kid playing at chess in a wheelchair was seen as brave by many. In the early 90s, worthy of special respect, and nowadays, just another kid. That sometimes happens to need to play at the end of the row, and sometimes would be quite willing to play in the middle of the row as long as the board could be reached by them. If you make an assumption and give a person an accommodation that's unwanted, that can come across as intrusive or even condescending. So what I'll ask as an example, if I see someone in a wheelchair, I'll ask if they want a designated board at the end of the row. If they want one, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. But I'm letting the person make the decision. I'm not trying to impose my decision on them. And any other challenges can also be dealt with that way. Someone on crutches or someone who needs an additional board, the touch board, because they've got visual issues. But ask them what they need. Don't just automatically assume that you know best what the player needs. Treat them in the way that they want to be treated. Number 19 is getting a pairings program. When I began in the 80s, I was very fast with pairing cards. Some people said I looked like a Mississippi, literally said that I looked like a Mississippi riverboat dealer when I was laying the cards out. And I found that when I moved to a pairing program, I could have the rounds paired at about the same time I did when I did the pairings manually with pairing cards. But with a pairing program, I could spend the bulk of the round on the tournament floor instead of taking care of all the updates and partial pairings that would be needed to get the pairings done on time if I was doing it manually. And also, using a pairing program meant that if someone blindsided me with a last minute withdrawal, I didn't have to change 20 or 30 pairings. I could just simply rerun it almost instantly. So also the reports are simpler to generate. You can use various sequences, such as both alpha and board by board, without having to manually rewrite both of them. And if, as has happened, the hotel staff throws away the wall charts that are posted, then they can be regenerated instead of one US Open having to go to the dumpster to dive for the wall charts that had originally been there so they could put them back up. Computers have caused difficulties in some areas, but in others, they make things a lot easier. They've made handling the tie breaks and the money splits a lot easier as well. You just have to make sure you know how to set things up properly. The easiest mistake that can be made is someone who doesn't realize they did not do the correct setting when they set up the pairing program. Also, know how to do manual pairings at least a little bit so you can recognize incorrect settings. At one of our tournaments, I was the chief TD in my back room. Chief was very knowledgeable on the pairing program. Wrote it. And for the final round, he said, wait a second, these pairings on the top boards look strange. They just don't seem right. So I went, looked, and saw what it had come up with, and then I looked further and said, well, here are the pairings that should be made. And my backroom person looked at those pairings, made one setting change in his in the pairing program setup to allow interchanges, and then it came up with my pairing. I mean, he knew exactly how the pairing program worked. He knew everything that was available, but he had missed the correct setting, which normally does not come into play. Interchanges don't happen until things get difficult in most cases, and he just missed it. So when someone that knowledgeable about a pairing program can make a mistake, anyone can. Please review the settings. Make sure you have all of your settings correct when you're using the pairing program. It's the easiest mistake to never notice that you even made. So try to avoid making it in the first place. When we get to number 24, you'll hear more on that. Number 20 is listen to people. Now, you may not rule in favor of a person, but if you honestly listen to them, hear what they're saying, they will feel better. And for that matter, you might find out some more information that will lead you to modify the ruling once you realize something you hadn't known before that need to be taken into account. When people come up after round one pairings are posted and say they were skipped an error, often a self-inflicted error, getting a reputation for listening calmly and working to resolve things helps keep those players and their parents calm with the confidence that it will be resolved if there's any way to do so. I mean, particularly in those cases, if you've got one person who is missed in the pairings, that's a problem. If you have 4 or 6 people that are missed in the pairings, that's 4 or 6 problems that end up fixing each other. And if you remain calm enough to actually look at that, people will learn that, hey, you can handle it. Also, people want to know that you care about them, and that's hard to do if you don't listen. I've often said that there are 4 types of scholastic parents. First type are the parents that know what's going on, have very few questions, and are easy to deal with. Second type are parents who do not know what's going on, do not ask questions, get confused and exasperated, frustrated, pull their kids from chess, and are easy to deal with because they're invisible. I don't like having people in that group because they pull their kids from chess simply because they didn't stop to ask. The third group are the parents who don't know what's going on and are determined to find out. They'll ask questions that they want answered. Generally, they'll accept a delay in the middle of critical tasks that require a lot of your time. But as long as you get back to them, they can accept that delay. Some TDs don't like them because they take up so much time. Might consider them a pain in the neck, maybe a bit lower. But I found that in the long run, if you respond to those parents, answer their questions, explain what's going on, they'll end up intercepting maybe 15, 20, 25 times as many future questions as they asked. And they'll often seem more approachable, and people in that second group may talk to them instead of this scary big TD that they're too hesitant to go see, and reduce the number of parents that remain in the second group because the third group reaches out to them and takes care of that. So, yes, people in the third group take time. Saves a lot more in the long run and makes things nicer for everybody else. The fourth group are the true pains that only want to hear the answers that would help them and want to argue on anything else. We'll get back to them later. And fortunately, it's a very small group, at least in our area. Number 21, use a soft voice. There's one high school tournament, a fixed board team, where a high school coach had just pointed out an illegal move. He was ignored because he didn't point it out loud enough for anyone to hear him. So I walked up to him quietly and said, "Please leave." And he looked at me in confusion, and I just as quietly said, "Now." That's actually a little bit louder than when I spoke to him in the room because there were games going on. But that's about the tone I was using. So he looked, after I said no, he looked at me and just left. Found out later, he said, told another coach that he'd coached high school basketball, baseball, and wrestling. And the only time he was ever ejected was at a chess tournament. Now, the term soft voice might also be described as a non-accusatory voice. Like I said, for a lot of tournaments, particularly scholastics, I'll ask participants in the pre-tournament announcements to raise their hand if there's any confusion about the rules, not saying if their opponent's trying to cheat, but confusion about the rules, because resolving confusion is a lot less confrontational than saying whether or not somebody was cheating or was being falsely accused of cheating. And in most cases, particularly scholastics, it really is confusion. So it's more accurate to say that anyway. And when spectators are now allowed, I'll finish up my general announcements by saying that I cordially invite all parents and coaches to leave. Now, that's a polite way of saying get out, but they appreciate the politeness. A little bit amusing because they know that I want people to leave, but I am being cordial about it, and they're more likely to accept that. Also, if you stay calm and you have a problem to deal with, then people you are talking with are more likely to stay calm and stay as quiet as you are. If you start raising your voice and they start raising your voice, eventually you are disturbing the tournaments. About the only time to not use a soft voice is when you're making announcements that people have to hear. But if you want to come across as a reasonable person, as a TD that no reasonable person would see a need to argue with and no unreasonable person would be able to win an argument with, then use a soft voice, and firm but soft. Number 22, don't take it personally. People will get upset. Sometimes coaches will argue just to show their students and their parents that they have their backs. But they'll still accept the correct ruling after they've shown that they support their students. I mean, they're getting paid for it. They have to show that they are doing what they should to stand up for their kids. And once you realize that they're not doing it personally, taking it personal against you, it's not a personal attack, and you know what they're trying to do, things go through fairly calmly. Sometimes slightly loud, but still fairly calmly. And as I said before, if you react calmly, people are more likely to listen to you. And if someone is trying to make you react poorly and you remain calm, it can annoy the heck out of them. So you can take that as a little consolation for dealing with them. Don't rush. The easiest thing you can do to make a mistake is try to rush to get things done. If you're moving at a deliberate and reasonable pace, regardless of how much participants want to make you rush, then you will get things done more quickly. And when you essentially ignore people that are trying to interrupt you on something critical, it avoids other people from chiming in thinking that getting you flustered will get them to take care of you first. If you've got a lot of last-minute entries after the cutoff, you've got the option of either trying to rush quickly, get him in, and get the round started late, or pausing to get all the pairings done that for the players that made it in on time. Have someone post that and then start dealing with everyone who came in after the cutoff to see if you can get them in or if they'll get half-point buys. That way, the organizer has the tournament starting on time. You've got it starting on time. You're doing what you can for the others, and you did not get yourself flustered by trying to rush and get things done at a time when you couldn't really safely do so. And the easiest way to make an error at the end of a tournament is to rush through the final results with players and coaches that are pressing. They need to know as quickly as possible because they will need to know if they have to book a different flight to stay for the award ceremony or use their original flight. So you'll have a lot of pressure for people trying to figure out if they're going to be getting a prize. And if you rush, you might get 50 people helped correctly for each one person that you make a mistake on. And you'll have a lot more problems from that one person you make a mistake on than you ended up making things easier for the other 50 that you happen to get correct. And a 50-to-1 is actually a pretty good TD ratio for someone who actually is willing to rush like that. A lot of times the numbers are worse. Avoid rushing and the time waste that you'll have trying to bounce back and forth between things with interruptions or with redoing stuff that you did wrong will be worse off than if you just took things calmly. Number 24, nothing is perfect. Even when it's not, however, you can often make it seem like it was. I've done more than 700 tournaments, maybe more than 800 now. I haven't counted recently. And I've never had a perfect one, but often I'm the only one who knows that something wasn't perfect. A lot of times I see a problem and get it fixed before anything gets past me, and everything's resolved before any pairings are done or results are posted, even though there was a problem there temporarily. Experience helps you learn how to recover from any problems. And when players and coaches realize that you're able to make a recovery from any problem that you or someone else may have caused, then they're more willing to let you get things fixed without trying to make it a huge issue. They'll point out a problem, knowing that it'll get fixed, and then they can go on and they're okay. When I mentioned earlier about registration issues, if someone thought they registered and didn't, if they know that you can handle the situation, they'll say, okay, and let it go. And nothing is perfect also applies to the information you receive from registration. For a lot of tournaments, particularly the ones that don't use online registration forms, I may spend an extra 2 to 6 hours handling the registration glitches in the week before the event, and thus avoid an unexpected half-hour recovery in mid-tournament when time is critical. And finally, accepting that nothing is perfect better puts you in the mindset to track down and correct imperfections before they damage an event. Old saying, a pessimist is never unpleasantly surprised. But I feel that a realistic optimist can prepare for and combat adversity while still retaining the hope for the best that a pessimist has abandoned. Number 25, be prepared. Make sure your computer works, your printer, your backup print cartridge, you have paper, clocks for long running games, score sheets, tape for posting, current rating supplement. These used to be on paper, now they're online. Make sure you've downloaded one. Signage ready to be printed if you have to. Make sure you know how to run the pairing program, especially if you've recently done an upgrade to it. Know the significant details of the event, time control, round times, prizes, etc. Check the certification level and expiration of the safe play for the TDs that will be working the event. Do a pre-tournament check on any memberships that need to be resolved. It's a lot easier to get a membership resolved 2 days before the event than trying to do it after the third round and finding out, oh, that player withdrew after round 2. So be prepared, do everything you can up front. And we're actually, with Mike Nolan's presentation taking less time than I thought it would, and no ADMs needing to be discussed, we have pretty much come to the end of this. I will be sending copies to Renee so that they can be posted. And I am going to stop sharing my screen. We've got a hard stop at 9 o'clock, but for the next 10 minutes, we can have questions. Let's see what we've had so far.
Jeff,
I haven't been reading
on
the
behalf
chat.
of the executive board, I'd like to pass on the board's deep approval and appreciation of all the activities of the Tournament Director Certification Committee. Y'all have been invaluable, timely, and fair in what we have seen come before us. And we appreciate the hard work of the TDCC over the past year and look forward to continuing that relationship in the future.